Yeah, I speak a little bit on preseason. I like to compare expansion teams as either an Atlanta or a Minnesota. And I feel like typically the expansion teams kind of fall into one or the other, where you have like good success or you kind of have struggles in the first year. I would say maybe Charlotte was like a an outlier in that case where they were kind of middle ground last season. So in our preseason, definitely go give our the episode a listen when we did Western Conference standings predictions. Both of us had St. Louis. I would say more so in a Minnesota category, just based on where we had them finishing in the league. After watching them in the first two games, do you still feel as though they would be classified as a Minnesota type expansion team? Do you think that they would fall more so in the middle ground now, or think that they have more potential to be an Atlanta LAFC type expansion team?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think that St. Louis is about to create a category of their own. Um, and I say that because this is a roster build, and we alluded to it in the preseason. This is a roster build that is unlike anything we've seen before. You've had your teams, the LAFCs, the Atlantas, that have gone out and done young South American attacking talent that you're going to do constant counterattacks, 3v3, really exciting. You've had the Minnesotas, the FCCs, like we just mentioned, where you're going to have USL talent mixed in there that is going to kind of bring your level down. Or you've got the expansion teams that have brought in kind of older European players that, maybe aren't the best level. You think of New York City, right? This is the first team that has gone out and dipped into the youth of the European leagues to build the core of their team. Now, in terms of success, where can they finish? Again, if center backs are deciding to be sleeper agents for them, then they're going to finish top of the table every year because they're just going to be handed goals. However, long term, it's really going to depend on the longevity and the health of players like Klaus Ostrak and Leuven. I think you might see something along the lines of, and again, I have to use Red Bull as my focus here, but you might see something along the lines of Kaku or Luquinhas, where they come in and they have a silly good first half of the year. Nobody can figure them out, and then all of a sudden, come midterm break, come uh, mid season break, you're looking at, okay, we figured out what these guys are going to do. They're going to go ice cold, and then everybody else goes ice cold. Um, if they can avoid that, this team, the sky's the limit for this team. But realistically, watching them play, it might be a low playoff team, especially with the expansion to 9 teams. It's probably a low playoff team right now, but there's a long season to go. So, but I would say that they're probably in a league of their own in terms of who we can compare them to based off of their roster.
I'd argue that they're somewhat similar to how Charlotte kind of built theirs. I mean, they kind of Charlotte had a lot of players that I would say more so of their big name players were, you know, younger-ish towards like the prime of their career European guys like Swiderski came from Greece. He was only 24. Your Juzwiak came from Derby at 23. Sergio Ruiz came from Granada at 26. They also brought in Kalina, who was only 28. So, I mean, to me, the roster build seems similar to Charlotte. And honestly, based on what you were saying, I kind of feel like I could see a season for them that's kind of similar to Charlotte's, just kind of like in and around that playoff hunt at the end of the season, but kind of more so on the border of it. Would you say you agree with that, or you still think St. Louis kind of has their own path here?
I'll say that Juzwiak came in mid-season, right? He wasn't a part of the original build, um, and they still kept when I mentioned that dipping into the youth of the European leagues, I probably should have been more specific. I mean, they're going out and getting these players from relatively successful German league teams is kind of where I wanted to highlight that, right? But whereas Charlotte dipped into Romania or what was the other one? Poland or Greece, and then the last one here was what is this last one here? Hold on, Portugal, right? Second division Portugal. Um, this feels like they've really gone out and pushed for a set system. Now Bradley Carnell has experience playing in Germany, coaching in excuse me one second while I coaching in South Africa, but playing in Germany. He knows the system very well. It is an idea that I think he was probably the driver of. He wanted to get good young um, high potential Germans in there to keep that style that he's used to.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you look at the build of the team, like you said, it's yeah, 100%. I mean, if you look at the makeup of the team, like if you just pulled up transfer market has a good list of where all these guys are coming in from. There are a number, and these are like key players for them too, like guys that have really been the heart of the team so far. Uh, they're all coming from, like you said, top level German clubs. And to be fair to what you were saying, I think that is a bit different from Charlotte, where it's you're grabbing first of all from consistently from one league, which I think definitely has an effect. They're used to a style of play. They kind of have a sense of how to play with one another, even though they weren't necessarily on the same team. And then also just like the level of the Bundesliga is going to be higher than the level of league that Charlotte was bringing players in from. So I definitely would say I would agree with what you were saying. I think that's definitely a good observation. I could definitely see them being kind of a league of their own. It's very different from the way I feel like the league was moving previously, where it was like all young South American talent, like just raiding the Brazilian and Argentinian and Colombian leagues and finding the next young talent to build up and send on. Where St. Louis seems to be grabbing like a mixture of guys that are kind of starting to hit the prime from already like established good leagues in Europe. So it'll be really interesting if they're successful with to see if other new expansion teams start to maybe try and build it similarly to this.